Welcome to Moving People Forward with Mark Elfstrand. This program is a series of conversations on commonly seen challenges in everyday people's lives. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories you hear today. Perhaps you know of someone who would also benefit. Be sure to share the program link with a friend. Now, here's Mark.
Military people understand the importance of receiving their commission for their assignment. But what if your assignment is the Great Commission? Well, thank you for joining us today. We're going to be hearing from a couple who has responded to such a call on their lives, and we're going to learn about the world of difference that they are now making. With me today on Moving People Forward, I have two special guests and friends, Levi and Diane Velasco, principals in a ministry known as GLINTS. Levi, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you again.
I see you brought your girlfriend with you.
Yep.
Yeah,
who is Mark.
And these two have managed to produce really some of the finest children on the planet. I met their daughter years ago when I was working at a different organization, and she was just a very, very special person. So you must have done a great job as parents. Congratulations on that, by the way. Now you have an organization that is known as GLINTS, and GLINTS, which obviously is an acronym, right?
It is.
All right, and it stands for what?
For Global Intercultural Services.
Okay, and who came up with this?
I did. It was in 2011 that the organization was established, but it was born out of a conviction that we need to do better in mobilizing people for Great Commission ministries.
Okay, we're going to talk about that Great Commission here in just a moment, but tell me about your backgrounds first. Now, Diane, you were born in New York?
I was.
Yeah, and so you love New York so much you said, this is where, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. No?
Not quite.
Not quite.
I actually left New York by myself. It was a different world back then.
Yeah.
I was 13, turning 14, wanted to visit my grandparents in the Philippines.
Oh.
And I got stuck there. I just loved learning what it is to be Filipino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were there for a number of years?
I did 3 years of high school there.
Yeah.
And applied for the University of the Philippines. Didn't think I would get in, but I did. So I went right back.
Oh,
and that's where I met Levi.
Okay, and when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
When I was growing up, I wanted to be an orchestral conductor. I was 7 years old. I remember this. I was looking at the mirror and I said, I want to be a conductor, because I was in a family of musicians. But the Lord gave me that dream, but then He had other plans for me, where He called me to be His servant, to serve Him in full-time vocational ministry.
Yeah, said in complete humility, are you musically talented?
I think I am,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I still do play my viola with a local community orchestra.
Okay. Now, you also found a girl that apparently had musical talent too.
Yes, we met in the University of the Philippines concert chorus.
Oh. But she kind of took a different route in terms of her music. Tell me about that.
I got classical training in voice, but went the pop music way because there's just no money in classical music.
Were you pretty successful, just to be fair? I mean, were you well
pretty
known?
much.
Yeah.
On the recording side, I recorded commercial jingles in that era where jingles was
Yes.
a big thing.
Right.
And actually had 65% of the solo jingles market for radio and TV in the Philippines during a season. But I did that for about 10 years.
Yeah, you're pretty successful in that. So in a way, you were kind of like the Donnie and Marie Osmond, but you were classical and she was kind of hip. Is that kind of the way it was?
Kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of. Okay, well, obviously, you didn't stay in the role of a conductor, and you didn't go on to become a great pop singer. Something else happened in your lives. Where did that change of journey begin?
Well, this was still in Manila, where we were climbing the ladder of being, musical greats.
Yeah.
And our lives were falling apart because there was so much self-centeredness applied to this pursuit. but God had other plans. And because I was raised in a Methodist church, became a believer when I was 16, and I set aside those spiritual things aside, and I said, it's my time, and I stiff-armed God for a while. But that led to a lot of heartache, and in 1982, he led us to a church in Manila called the Green Hills Christian Fellowship, and that's where God took a hold of us.
So Diane, how about your own path here? I mean, he was going one way. Were you on that same path at the same time?
I was, but because I was on the showbiz side of things,
Right.
it was, I looked like a goody two-shoes compared to everybody else. So I also grew up in church and I was a mother at a young age, so I would bring my two little girls with me to the recording studios or to the nightclubs where I was in a show band, or if I was doing a solo gig. So it kind of protected me from the wildest of the wild side of showbiz life. So I always thought I was better than everybody else. I was more moral than others. But the Lord did show me the truth of who I had become, that my life was all about me.
Okay, so as you start to have this kind of joint venture about more spiritual discovery and the importance that would play in your lives, you apparently also made, somewhat of a career change also about that time. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. Because when you are in an industry where morality is not an important part of your life, where you really don't care about spiritual things.
Yeah.
And so basically, when you're in that industry, you become committed to Christ, and you're a baby Christian, it's very hard to grow within that industry. It's not like being an accountant where you can stay in your work, in your enterprise. We had to divorce ourselves from our careers because our ultimate goal was to glorify Christ. And if we wanted to grow, we had to break away from that.
Was that harder for you at all, Diane?
No, not at all.
So you had both come to the conclusion that this is where we need to go.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit harder because music was like a drug to me. So I had to avoid going into concert halls for a while.
But some people would say, no, wait a minute, aren't there people of faith who, couldn't you have just remained in your faith and also been a conductor?
Yes, actually I could have, but I wanted to know who Christ was first, because I wasn't strong enough to stay in there and not be compromised.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break. We're going to hear more about your story because you've got this organization called GLINTS, and we haven't really talked much about that and how it's grown to be what it is today and what your objectives are, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. If you're watching today and you're saying, who are these people? Well, they're just dear friends, wonderful folks, Levi and Diane Velasco, and they're going to be explaining about their Great Commission work to impact the world when we continue in just a moment.
God is our safe place and our strength. He is always our help when we are in trouble. This word of God in Psalm 46:1 says it all. God is our safe place. He is our strength. He is our help when we are in trouble. Whenever and wherever we are invited, nationally or internationally, Lutheran Church Charity's mission is to bring the mercy, compassion, presence, and proclamation of Jesus Christ to those who are suffering and in need. LCC is a ministry of presence, to be present with Jesus, to lift up people in times of joy and sorrow, in prayer, and by passing through donations of dollar per dollar to those in need. Through our canine ministries, we respond and deploy with boots on the ground and paws within 24 hours, often sooner. of any crisis or disaster situation we're invited into. Our LCC disaster response teams continue our support, both financially and with our dedicated volunteers, for those communities during their long-term recovery and efforts, which can be years. Disaster response teams also train volunteers through our alert training to equip volunteers to respond to the various types of disasters. LCC's human care ministries work through our churches and pastors to provide financial and in-kind donations, people resources, and emotional and spiritual care. We have strong partnerships with churches and Christian ministries across the U.S. and internationally. You see, for us, the bottom line is make it a difference by being present. For people who are suffering and in need with that mercy, compassion, presence of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for allowing us the privilege to stand alongside and serve others. Jesus and your partnership make that possible to touch thousands of lives.
This is Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand. Good to have you with us. We're discussing the work of a dynamic couple that is sharing a vision to reach a hurting world. And my guests are Levi and Diane Velasco, the founders of GLINTS, Global Intercultural Services. That's what the acronym stands for. Let's continue our conversation. Well, let's talk about now GLINTS. So you came to the United States in, was it what, 1983?
Yes.
Was that what you were planning to do when you came to this country?
No, not really. Can you explain?
Yeah, we had 3 daughters by this time, and we're preparing for full-time Christian ministry because we had sensed God calling us into a new direction. But then my parents in New York contacted us that here we were, I was the only one married, only one who had children, and my father was significantly older than my mom, could not do the 24-hour travel to the Philippines, even just to meet his grandkids. So they asked us to come home, and we did, July of 1983, the 3 girls and myself. And then Senator Benigno Aquino was assassinated as he was getting off the airplane from political asylum in the U.S. Over there in Manila, and everything turned upside down. And so my parents wouldn't let us go back, and then they eventually sent for Levi.
Okay, so you come over to the country, and now what's your game plan?
There was no game plan.
Oh, that's great.
God had the game plan. But we had, we lived in New York for a little bit, and then we had an opportunity to visit Chicago. And we were, basically staying with my cousin, and we met some friends of hers who were working at Moody Bible Institute. And they visited us, and we told them our story, how God had touched us and called us to full-time Christian work. And they said, why didn't you enroll at Moody Bible Institute?
Both of you? Or you?
Just me.
Okay.
And we said, oh, we can't do that. We're an immigrant family. We don't have any money. And she said, you don't need money to go to Moody Bible Institute.
Right. Tuition paid.
Tuition paid, yes.
Yeah, right.
And it was, one thing led to another. I enrolled as a music major with a voice emphasis and graduated in 1988. Again, we didn't have any plan, but God unfolded the plan for us.
Okay, so when did GLINTS then come into organization?
The idea came to me in 2005.
Okay.
And it kind of germinated from that point on, and it became a reality in 2011.
Okay, and just in layman's terms, for somebody who has no idea really what you're talking about, what is it you do?
What we do is we try to give people and organizations a platform where they could do the gospel work that God has called them to. And what I mean is we send people out to spread the gospel by church planting, by humanitarian activities, and other things that people are called to do. Especially we have other people who do sports ministry. They use sports to help people out. And the organizations that we're aligned with are all over the world, and some do disaster relief, development of community development. And so it's a varied kind of activity that we do all over the world.
So, but your end game really is twofold. You want to just influence lives to help people on one side, but your overriding vision for this is really to help people receive what oftentimes in your faith background would be what we call good news, that you'd like to introduce them to who Jesus is and to help them learn what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Would that be accurate?
Yes, our approach is holistic. We want to minister to, body, soul, and spirit.
Okay.
And so we do a lot of humanitarian work, but then we have this element where we feel like if we just help people live their lives without sharing with them the good news of Jesus Christ, then maybe we're not doing the right thing. So our goal is to be able to introduce people to Jesus that leads them to understand who He is.
How many countries are you actually working in with various groups?
We are in at least 8 countries today.
Is China one of them?
No, China is not one of them.
China's a hard place to get into.
Yes, it is.
These
Especially
days.
today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And do you work in other countries where persecution of people of faith is a significant problem?
Yes, we do, but we can't really talk about it
Wow.
because some
Yes.
of these areas where we have our people, they're not even our missionaries are not even on our website in a way that you would recognize them.
Yeah, how about cultural barriers? Just in terms of, okay, you don't know the language, but I want to do this, but I don't speak it, I don't understand the cultural things, and even things in language that you say something and somebody just gets offended, but you go, well, I don't even know what I said wrong. Tell me about that. Does that happen periodically?
Well, language training is one of the first things, one of the priorities that you have to get into. Some can actually start their language training while they're still here in the U.S., but the bulk of it comes with cultural training as well when you're already on the mission field.
For people that might be interested in doing what you're talking about and said, I'd love to get this international opportunity, how do they connect with you?
Well, they contact us and we actually set up a meeting. Sometimes it's by Skype that we initially meet with people. And we talk to them, hear what their heart's desire is, and learn about the skills that they have. And then we spend time up front getting to know people deeply before doing any processing to move them, to mobilize them, because GLINTS is not necessarily a fit for anyone and everyone who wants cross-cultural ministry.
Does it help if they start at your website, just to get familiarity with what you're doing?
Yes, they can contact us through several avenues. The website is glints.org, GLINTS.org.
Okay.
Or they can go on our Facebook page and connect with us that way. And the information to go further in the contact is there in the website and also on Facebook.
And then if you want Diane to give you private voice lessons, I don't think she's going to be doing that anytime soon, but or if you need orchestral counsel, that's not currently on your business plan.
I do teach a couple of kids.
Well, there you go. Very good.
Violin and viola.
Violin and viola.
But he's a good voice teacher too.
Yeah, and you're also, as I noted, you are successful in parenting. And anybody who can pull that off with good kids is to be admired. I want to thank you both for being willing to spend some time explaining what you do. And I hope even today it'll make a difference in somebody's life and maybe they'll follow up with this. So thanks for being on with us.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
having
Thank
us,
you.
Mark.
Levi and Diane Velasco of GLINTS. And that's going to wrap up our program for today. As the sages have told us, grow in wisdom, think humbly of yourself, and love one another. May it be so with you. Join me next time for more of Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand.
Woof!